Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. On today's episode of the Sip and Scale podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Shannon St. a seasoned executive with over a decade of experience in the vacation rental industry. Shannon brings a unique blend of strategic thinking, business acumen, and hands-on operational expertise, making her a true leader in the field. Managing properties across iconic locations like New York City, the Hamptons, Martha's Vineyard, and the Hudson Valley, she has a deep understanding of the complexities of managing a large portfolio of properties in some of the most sought-after locations. Shannon is passionate about delivering exceptional guest experiences while driving maximum returns for property owners. From developing effective business strategies to managing day-to-day operations and building strong relationships with stakeholders, her insights are valuable to anyone that's trying to build a strong property management company. Shannon, welcome to the show. For those of you watching, Shannon has been my friend, associate, mentor for the last 5 or 6 years, I think. And I've learned a lot from her, and I'm really looking forward to having a productive conversation about this industry that you're in.
Blendi, thanks for having me, and happy to be on the show.
Awesome. Okay, let's start with your origin story. I know from knowing you for the last few years, I know that you had a background in the consulting space and the finance space, and you transitioned to the real estate and property management space. I'd love to know about your origin and how you've progressed to where you are now.
Yeah, so my first job out of college was at GE Capital, working in their commercial real estate division doing portfolio analytics. And I just thought I was going to be in commercial real estate. But unfortunately, that was the same time as the subprime meltdown situation. And basically all the real estate jobs kind of dried up, got laid off, and transitioned into finance. So I ended up working literally in the New York Stock Exchange as a financial regulator for a few years, literally on Wall Street in the exchange. And then I transitioned into consulting, which was an amazing experience because I learned so much because all of our clients were big broker dealers and investment banks and asset management firms. So it was a really, laying the groundwork for my future self.
If there's anything I've learned about you, it's that you're probably one of the most process-oriented people I know. And I did not have that corporate consulting background. And I always think to myself, I'm like, wow, it really comes in handy to have that consulting background because you see how other companies run efficiently. You're providing insights to them, and you have to be process oriented. You have to be process and protocol driven. I'm sure that has played like a huge role in how you run your business today.
I mean, it's been a game changer. I mean, I truly think sometimes I hear about folks graduating straight out of college and doing their own business. And I'm a little bit, the things that I've learned in corporate and being able to apply that to the business, to my own business, has been a game changer. And I think that kind of puts me a little bit ahead of some of my competitors, if that makes sense. But process systems, I mean, I am anal about it, and it's a thing that I think that's really contributed to part of my success in this industry.
How do you make that transition though? Like, what was the catalyst for your transition from consulting to property management? I mean, for me, it was on the verge of going to law school, and I just out of the blue met someone in the space and started working with them because it was just coincidentally, you meet someone, an opportunity comes about, and then boom, you're in this new industry. What was that for you?
Mine was accidental too. I think it was just like, how you have that entrepreneurial spirit in you and it never goes away. Like, you are, or you're not, you know what I mean? It's there bubbling up. And I was working in consulting, so I was traveling a lot. So I was one of the first people in New York to do Airbnb. And I was like, okay, I was new to the game and started renting out my space on Airbnb while I was traveling. And I was like, okay, numbers are making sense. I'm making $400 a night on this apartment. Start doing the math. You're like, okay, this looks good. Then you're like, all right, well, let me just get another one. So I just got another apartment. So I was like, all right, working my job, get another apartment. I'm like, oh, now I'm making one apartment's bringing in like a 10,000 a month. Okay. Wow. Now I'm almost close to matching my salary. We get another apartment. And then you just start to scale. So it really is accidental. It's also just kind of taking a leap. And I think by my third apartment, I was like, why am I working in corporate? I can do my own thing. So the transition was truly natural, but also just kind of being in that mindset of just like, hey, you see an opportunity and the math is mathing, as they say, right? So the math made sense. It's like, why am I working so much harder? And you get the opportunity to be your own boss. So yeah.
Did you have people around you that are like, you're crazy, like for leaving like a really reputable consulting job to go and be your own boss?
100%. Even my colleagues, everyone thought I was crazy. And I always caution people because people are like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and start my own business. And I personally didn't even do that fully. Like I came close to matching my salary before I left. So it didn't feel like much of a risk to make that leap. But I tell folks that I mentor, I'm like, hey, at least get to half of your income or maybe 30 to 40% of your income before you quit your job full time, because bills need to be paid and we need to be realistic about the new, career that you're going into or the new gig that you're going into.
And then in the beginning, I'm sure, having been in the property management space myself, when you start off, you're doing everything yourself. You're going to the properties, you're checking up on the housekeepers, you're doing order fulfillment to get the property stocked up. In the beginning, were you just a one-man show? From the get-go, did you have a team? Walk me through a little bit how you actually went from just being a solopreneur to then building out a team for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, I was doing the cleanings. But once you get about 3 or 4 properties in, you're like, okay, I need help. Your first hire typically is like the cleaning person, right? You're like, all right, I need to get a legit cleaning person to help me with this. Then I think when I got to my 6th property, I was like, I need like a little assistant to help. Maybe,
You need to delegate a little bit.
I need to delegate. Love that plug there. So I need to delegate. I was like, okay, let me just delegate. I read Tim Ferriss' book. This was many years ago, maybe like 13 years ago. Read the Tim Ferriss book. And I think like most people are like, oh, what? The concept of even like hiring another company abroad and then helping you was like, oh man. So I found this agency online and I think I hired my first person for like $5 an hour, $5 or $6 an hour. And that kind of gave me a little bit of leeway so then I could focus on getting more properties. So delegation is key and you learn really quickly that it is needed in order to grow.
Obviously, I'm a huge proponent of delegating responsibilities and tasks to like really competent, high-level thinkers that are overseas. What has been the return on investment, so to speak, in hiring that overseas talent? What's the difference it's made to your business operations?
I mean, obviously, it's money, right? Like the numbers, right? In the sense of be able to get talent abroad for a cheaper rate. I remember when I had someone that was helping me in the US and I was paying them, I don't know, like $25, $30 an hour, and realized I was like, oh, I can get like 3 people abroad, 3 or 4 folks abroad for the same price. And even if they're working half as much as that one person, then I can, but so it's been a matter of like saving money, leveraging time, like what they say, buy back your time, and realizing that difference. So it's not easy though. And that's why I appreciate firms like yours, because what I didn't realize was I wasn't great at hiring. So I would just pick anyone, or I would look at their resume like, oh, okay. And then think that I would know that this person would work out. And then I would spend a ton of time like training someone and realizing that they weren't necessarily a good fit for the culture or me, or they didn't really know what they were doing, but they said they did in the interview. And so a lot of lost time, but you learn. It took years for me to improve that process of like how to hire. And man, I truly appreciate recruiters and I appreciate agencies and firms like yourself that actually do some of the front end work in terms of getting top talent, because it's hard. And you, as a small business owner, you waste a lot of time training someone and then realizing that like, oh yeah, they're not a good fit.
There is a huge industry in recruitment because like anything, like sales is hard. Marketing is hard. All of these different parts of your business have a certain difficulty, but there's one thing that takes up so much time out of an organization, and that's recruitment. Your recruits, The people that you bring into your organization can make or break the company. It can lead to wasted time. It can lead to wasted resources if it's not done right. And when we have conversations with prospective clients, we explain to them the whole process, A to Z. It is a lengthy process. It's, hours of interviewing, sourcing, looking at personality assessments to determine whether or not they would be a right fit. It's coordinating with the client to see how is their business being run and how does that fit into the candidate we're looking at. So it's a process, but if you get it right, oh my God, it has a tremendous upside for your business.
But it's so hard to get right. And I truly think if your job is not recruiting or HR or in that space of knowing how to source talent, it takes so much energy and effort. And to be honest, I think about business owners or small business owners really just outsourcing that or trying to find someone that's in it day in and day out, and they know how to look for candidates. They know how to screen them, because that extra premium on getting the right talent will save you so much. I remember every person that I would hire, I remember thinking my life is going to suck for that first month that they're there, because that first month that they're there, the first 2 weeks, it's basically I was working 40 hours a week, right? An extra 20 hours a week would be dedicated to just training them. So then I had 60 hours a week that I was working if I had to get my work done and train them to get their work done. So it was just so much work. And so you need to get it right, because that time, it's valuable.
The worst thing is you bring someone on and then you pour all this time in training and onboarding, and then a month in, you're like, this isn't going to work. And in the beginning, when I was recruiting for our property management company, I made that mistake. And the last few years, I realized the mistakes that I made. I meticulously looked at our process to see where the bottlenecks, what's wrong, and we built a strong process from that that's led to success for our recruiting firm.
I mean, you guys are killing it. I can tell that you are really trying to take it to the next level in terms of recruiting. So you've helped me as well. So it's a process. It's a skill. It is work. And
definitely. What people don't know is actually when I hired my first few assistants, I remember I received Google form that you sent me that went through that. You're very process oriented, right? You sent me a Google form that you use in your internal recruiting process. And I remember that was my first interaction with the actual recruiting flow. And to this day, I'm super appreciative of that, because that kind of set a lot of things. It set the flow for what we are today, which is global recruitment firm for virtual assistants.
Let's give them context though. So what the form was. So let me just give you context. So I would put out resumes online, right? This is through different recruiting websites. And you would get so many resumes, it was hard to screen it. So for me, I would have this Google form that we created, and they would have one trick question in there, but then it'd also have just basic things like, how much are you expected to be paid? What are your hours that you're expecting to work? So therefore I could just because some people will just apply to things and then they're expecting triple what you're even offering to pay, or how many hours they actually want to work. And you're like, this is not even a fit. Why'd you even apply? But that form was a good screener. And so I'm glad you were able to use it and significantly improve it from where I left off.
It's a process. I've realized over the years that processes that you have in place, especially as you get bigger, you can't train everyone the way you did in the beginning, where it was hand holding one person, because as you grow, you need to have everything needs to be standardized. Otherwise, oh my God, it becomes a mess. It's really difficult to run a business when you have dozens of employees. And if you don't have those processes in place, forget about it. You're going to end up having people that don't know what they're doing. B, your clients end up being not so happy, and inevitably the business doesn't run as well as it should. You're a successful businesswoman. You have grown your property management company across different states and different really great locations. Let's get to the foundational qualities and habits that bring about success. For me, it's so cliche, but it's, you say consistency. Like one of the habits is that I have seen for me personally in my business success thus far is just a ruthless pursuit of consistency. If you're consistent every single day, there will be positive outcomes for you in a very wide time frame. So I'd love to hear about the habits that you have, practical habits that have brought your success thus far.
Yeah, I like the word consistency. What comes to mind when I think about habits that I live by is being proactive instead of reactive, especially in the property management space. Here's an example. So let's say you have keys, right? Keys that guests need to get in. Now, the proactive approach is just to have the one key. You have the lockbox for the key to get in, for the guest to get in. Proactive approach would be to then have, because something could go wrong with the key. Something could go wrong with the lockbox. Something could go wrong where the key gets missing and doesn't get returned. So then what I've learned, every single thing that could go wrong, I'm a little bit more proactive in kind of thinking through like, okay, what's backup location 1, 2, and then 3. So therefore, and I've been in a situation where I've had to use the third backup option for a key. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about running a property management business. One of the things I tell my team about is like something that could go wrong, or someone may mention that, oh, they had a little trouble with the TV. All right, let's be proactive and write out some additional steps. So therefore, if someone had a loose problem with it, then we make sure to document this. So next time we have instructions for how this is going to work so it doesn't, so things don't go wrong. So being proactive has been a game changer and a huge habit for me. And I try to instill that in my team. I'd say another thing is just like we talked about this at length earlier, but process. My rule of thumb is if something is being done more than 2 times, if you know it's going to happen again, then we need to have a process around it and we need to document it. You should see how crazy we are in Notion. Shout out to Notion for being such a good database tool that we use. But we document SOPs, we document everything. Now we're doing all the videos, and now we're using ChatGPT to take the process, the video, and then make it into an SOP, a written SOP. So yeah, big habits, being proactive and establishing a process for anything that's done more than once has been a game changer in the business.
Is there any secret habits? Like nowadays people talk about like, yeah, the key to success, you wake up at 5 a.m. and you go get an ice bath, and then you have meditation for 30 minutes, and then you're all set. Like these are the habits to have success in life. Do you have like little tidbits of information that have kind of given you a certain amount of success in your life, like habits that have at least put you in the right mindset to have a good productive day?
Daily syncs with the team and over communicating. I think this is at least from the work perspective. Personally, I work out, so
there you go. Like that, you have work habits and you have your personal habits, and they're both equally as important.
It truly is. I mean, I'm hardcore. Like I eat right, I work out most mornings, but on a daily basis, I think that people undervalue, and I know there's this whole push for like no meetings, and I don't know in this space where it's such a high touch business to where you don't have daily syncs with the team or some type of touch point, especially when you have a remote team where everyone's working alone. Yeah. And I've come to value a quick little daily stand up, 15 minutes. Let's just touch base on anything so everyone knows it's on the same page. And also over communicating. There's a lot of assumptions that's being made around like, do they know what I'm saying? I think they get it. Like, and so I tend to, I don't know about trick little secrets, but that's it. Like one of the secrets is over communicating. I think people undervalue that and make a lot of assumptions. And I see where it goes wrong in other companies where they're not communicating well with each other, or they didn't communicate well with the guests or communicate well with the owner. And it's just not keeping all parties informed, because we have so many stakeholders in this business where over communicating helps.
There's incidents and situations where, you have meetings and, people just have meetings for the sake of having meetings. How do you ensure that when you are having meetings that you're staying on track and that the meeting isn't just because we blocked out a certain time on a morning basis to talk?
You just have to have an agenda for every meeting. Even if it's a daily sync, there has to be like an agenda and topics on it, and making that someone's responsibility to do it. I'm also okay with just saying, do we actually have any updates here? And let's just cancel the meeting and we just quickly communicate that via Slack. I hate having meetings just to have meetings, but keeping it kind of as a placeholder on the calendar keeps us in the mindset of, okay, we do need to think about what we need to come forward, share with the team. I think the team kind of thinks through it a little bit more, so we're on the same page. And again, the meeting could just be 5 minutes, just quick question, quick thing, let's just touch base. Yeah. But having an agenda will keep you focused. Don't come to a meeting without an agenda. We don't have an agenda. don't send it to
Yeah, definitely.
me. You saw me, right?
In terms of your team members, how have you given your remote staff overseas kind of the ability to grow within their positions? I think there's a lot of people out there that they're considering bringing on BA, or they're considering offshoring, and they want to know, like, how can I empower my assistants on a daily basis to really achieve success, grow professionally, grow personally? What are you doing to give those opportunities, growth opportunities to them?
Yeah, it's hard because when you're in a small business, you're relatively flat. So you don't have levels necessarily that go up, especially in, let's say, on the guest communication side, it's either guest communication and then the manager and then me. So there's not much rooms in terms of that, but we do annual bonuses. We also do random bonuses. And in terms of like just rewarding them for taking on responsibilities or whatever it may be, giving people ownership of stuff, trusting them, and like giving them a small budget. I think I got that idea from Zappos where it was like they could do whatever they need to do with the guests. So $50, I don't care. You can refund them. You can make a call to buy them something, whatever it is. You have $50 no matter what it is for every single guest interaction to do what you want. The other thing that's been really interesting is, or I think is a good way to kind of help them see that I really want them to grow or for them to take advantage of, is I now do a stipend, but we kind of have like a training budget. So once a month, there's a pot where you can use up to like $100. It's not much. You can either, accumulate it, take a class or do a training. There's always these online conferences you can join, certifications. And my thing is you can do whatever you want to do as long as it's somewhat related to the business. So giving them that budget so they feel like, look, I can grow, learn in this space, even if I'm not going to be here forever. And I always tell my team members, it's like, look, you're most likely not going to be in this role forever, right? So let's help you grow in other areas too. So whatever you want to take on, whatever you want to learn, if you're here in guest experience, but you want to learn more about marketing, happy to give you a few tasks in that role, providing some opportunities so they feel like they're just not stuck, because it's relatively flat when you're in a small business.
Yeah, of course. I guess moving on to the on-the-ground operations, how have you tackled managing multiple properties across different locations? It's hard enough as it is to operate a property management company in one location, but you're in upstate New York, you're in Martha's Vineyard, you're in the Hamptons. How do you do that? How do you manage that type of operation? I mean, of course, having remote staff helps you be able to handle those on the back end, but on the front end, you need on the ground staff in all of these locations.
Yeah, it's hard. This business is like running 40 little mini hotels and all these different areas. It is hard. This is not for the faint of heart. That's why you never hear a 5-year-old kid saying, I want to be a property manager when I grow up. It is hard, but it can be very rewarding. I found it very rewarding and I love what I do. However, again, this goes back to being organized, having the process. And I'm going to be frank, it goes to hiring good people and then also knowing when to fire them as well. So we just have a little bit more controls in place. So for example, for the cleaners that we hire remotely, we send them feedback immediately if there's anything that's wrong. And we also have a process on a monthly basis to go through all the positive reviews and negative reviews, giving them feedbacks. We also do month check on it, but it's really hard remotely when you're in upstate New York in the mountains. And it's not like there's scale where you can just go and just quickly ride by the property to check on something. You have to rely on your team and your staff to do their job. And then sometimes you realize that they're not doing their job. And how do you check for that? So having process in place to actually check for the quality control is really, really important. Checklists, follow up, photo evidence. Boy, oh boy, my phone's blown up with a whole bunch of photos. So we asked them to document everything, especially for the team that's remote. I'm not going to glamorize it. It's hard running so many. And actually, as of recently, we decided to scale back in terms of expanding any more outside of our core market, because in order to ensure a quality experience, you need control and you need to be able to have proper oversight. And it's hard remotely. It is.
Yeah, I could say like the hiring process also for on the ground staff, depending on the location you're in, it can be next to impossible, because you might have, I like to think about this like the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee, for example. It's a very in-demand market, but there's a shortage of good staff when it comes to maintenance, housekeeping. And because there's a shortage, there's premium on those housekeepers. So you end up also having to pay these exorbitant rates for cleaning. And a lot of times you're working with contractors and they're there has to be an alignment between the goals that the contractor has and the goals of your business. And the reality is, if the relationship doesn't work out, they have 5 other clients they can get within a matter of a few days. So really aligning the incentive structure becomes very difficult for a lot of these markets. Unless you have the means to like build a team internally, you're relying on contractors. And a lot of times that leads to subpar output.
I'm glad you're calling out. In Martha's Vineyard, it's like a very high-end area and there's just not enough workers. So what ends up happening is the workers actually commute in during the summer. They all stay in a house together to work during this 3-4 month period while it's busy season, and they leave. And it's just really, really hard to find great quality workers there. And the ones that are there, you pay them a ridiculous premium. I remember thinking, it was like, man, this cleaner's getting paid more than I was getting paid on Wall Street when I was working in corporate. But at this point, you just pay what you need to pay because you need to get the work done. It needs to be quality because you're responsible to your owners, for the guests to have a good experience. And so there's challenging.
This is not a problem that is confined to just me and you. I've seen in resort towns across America, ski resort towns especially, where housing is such a major issue. People that are working in these resort towns, they have to commute sometimes 2 hours to get to the resort town. And interestingly enough, I think that a lot of these large operators, hospitality providers, they're realizing that and they're building housing for their staff members just to accommodate that. So what are your next steps right now? Like, what's your 5-year plan now? Like conquering the property management world. Where are you right now? And what are you trying to really tackle within your business today?
So right now, I think now it's quality over quantity. I remember when I first started off, I was like, oh yeah, I want to manage over 100 properties. And realizing that's really not the goal, right? More is not better, because especially in the property management space, it's more about like, if you have one good quality client, really big house could make just as much as 4 smaller homes. So it's not about quantity, but we just decided to hone in and focus a little bit more. We're no longer expanding outside of the core markets that we're in. And we're really just actually now focused on the investment side and trying to build out, actually acquire buildings in New York City and manage those on a short-term rental basis. So the legal ones in New York City. That's really the focus right now for the next few years. So we're in the process of raising money. And fortunately, it's been not too much of a struggle because I have some really great owners and clients that are looking to invest. And I think it's a great opportunity. And the fact that we have the operation in on the back end makes it a really good combination and a good next step. So it's like, we already have the operations. Now we just need to...
You're also at that phase of your business where I think this is where a lot of people in the space, they start out managing other people's properties, and then they realize like, okay, really the capital, the value is in ownership. So it's really cool to see you making that transition now into actually acquiring more properties and building out a portfolio, because long term, that is the play. It's one thing to manage other people's properties. It's a whole other game to actually have your own properties that you can build equity in.
And you get to win together. So I think it's really good because we get to win alongside of the investors, owners that we're working with. So we're in it together.
Yeah. In terms of network, that's one thing I've always been impressed by you. You seem to know someone in every corner of like the city when it comes to like, you're talking about investors, you're talking about loan providers, real estate agents. You've got all these connects, Shannon. I often ask myself, I'm like, how does this woman know so many people? 1, how do you know all these people? 2, what advice do you have to other entrepreneurs that want to leverage their network, grow their business?
I think you're giving me too much credit. I feel like I used to be a little bit more on the scene and out and about when I was young, a few years ago, but things have definitely slowed down. But I would say just being curious. I don't know. Like, I think it's so important I love this. This is my passion. This is what I know. You know how you feel it in your blood when you know you're meant to do this. So it doesn't feel like, quote unquote, I'm networking per se. I'm just following the next lead. You talk to one person, then you talk to the next person. And I'm a huge advocate of going to conferences. And think about, you and I went to a conference together.
That's how we met. We
New
met
York.
at the Skiff
Yeah.
International Conference.
Yeah.
We sat next to each other. You had a notepad and everything. I was like, wow, this woman is serious about her conferences.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer of expanding your knowledge. Even now, remotely, I attend at least one or two webinars. You know, I'm a diehard podcast fan. So when you told me about this, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Podcasts. And I'm the type of person that I will actually message the guests on the podcast. I'm that person, right? Like, you're just interested in learning. You meet all these folks along the way. And I think there's always a sense of like, can I do this better? How can I make this process better? Let me learn from the best. There's just no really excuse now between ChatGPT, YouTube. It's really up to you on how much you want to expand, how much you want to grow your network. And it doesn't have to be cheesy and corny, like, oh, I'm networking, but it's almost organic. Same the way we met, I don't know, 7 years ago. This was a long time ago, 5 years,
Yeah.
years ago it was. Just being curious. And I think I would say number one thing, especially in a space, if you're starting off, one piece of advice I would say is just go to conferences, because you really just get to sit down with like-minded folks and really get to learn and get to see what else everyone's doing. I mean, I think I've made leaps and bounds in my business from the software that we use, the way we think about things. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about this.
Yeah.
All through conferences.
In terms of like getting homeowners, for example, to build up your property management company, has that been from cold outbound? Has it just been like friend of a friend? How have you managed to acquire a pool of owners to grow the business?
So I feel embarrassed by saying this, but I've never marketed before. So all of my business have been purely referrals. I guess to me, I'm never really pitching to anyone because you came in through a referral. And if I do quality work for one person, it kind of speaks for itself. And then your client will refer you to another person. I would say a slight advantage that I had was obviously working in finance. I knew a few folks that had homes in nicer areas that had second homes. And so through one friend that connected me to one client, like my finance friend connected me to another friend that they knew that had a home. Then after I did really well with that owner, then they referred me to their friend who has a home. So it's referral. So I really do think if you do a good job, people will want to spread the word and say, oh my God, I'm getting so much value.
I'm amazed by the fact that we have clients at Delegate, for example, that have large property management companies. And when I speak to the owners, I ask them about what their marketing looks like, their owner acquisition. They're like, we don't really have any like owner acquisition. We get a property and then like the neighbor 2 doors down says, hey, I saw your sign and you guys seemingly do a good job. We would like to work with you. And I know property managers, I swear to God, they have scaled their operation to 60, 70 properties just by that word of mouth.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you want to take it to the next level, you will eventually need to come up with a proper marketing owner acquisition plan. But, you know, in markets where they're a little bit higher end, you don't need 10, you just need 2, and then that will bring in the same amount as having. So it's about quality, not at least in my end, it's about quality, not quantity. I think to have a really good small business, you're able to have a decent life. You can do it this way. I'm an example of it.
The amount of time you have for yourself changed since you first started your property management company with the onboarding of overseas talent, bringing in different roles like an operations manager, guest communication team? How has that changed just the time that you have for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, delegation is key in the sense where you do buy back your time. So I remember there was one point where I was working like 15 hours a week because my team was doing most of the work. So I was thinking to myself like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. Like, this is amazing. Like, it was just enough. I was waking up, going to the gym, making breakfast, coming back. It was great. I think now I'm in a different phase right now. I'm trying to raise money. I'm trying to work on the investment side, which involves some construction work and stuff like that. So that's more work. I think I have it now to where the day-to-day operations take, maybe 20 hours a week, and the rest I'm able to spend on other projects that we're working on to expand and things that I'm interested in. So it's pretty good. It's actually, I was just thinking, I was like, if I don't grow anymore, like this is a decent life if I wasn't, trying to too aspirational and go into the next part. But yeah.
The reality is, if you just go back in time and think about how stressful it would be to run your business, if you were closed-minded and said, I don't want to hire anyone, I want to do everything myself, you would be stuck in front of your computer all day.
Yeah. And don't get it twisted. Property management is 24/7. I tell people this is not a job if you don't want to be called on Sunday. Like, even though I work, I mean, right now I'm working, 40 plus hours right now, but it is also summer. So it's cyclical, like summer season, most of my house is on board. So summer, I do work a lot more, but I just want to be careful and tell people, I'm like, look, this job, you will be called at like 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday or on a Saturday, and you're out with your friends and you need to handle something. Let's be clear about this. Like, let's be clear, but it balances out. Right.
The other thing I'll note is that you were talking before about how once you really built a team, it minimized the amount of hours of investment on a weekly basis. So you can, one, work less. The other thing to remember is as that workload lessens for you, now you're able to have higher leverage activities. So in your case, you went from working 40 plus hours a week, managing the operation, doing all the nitty gritty stuff that's required in this business, to maybe half of that time, which gives you the leeway to say, okay, now I'm going to invest my time in something that's going to give me much more upside, which is meeting with, for example, potential investors, looking at real estate deals, owning your relationships with key stakeholders. All of that is going to give you a lot more leverage and upside in the long term, which is going to put you in a very successful position.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think it's also like that mindset of like, yeah, you're spending more, but you're also making more too. And so that I had to get out of my head, because I kept thinking about, oh, well, I'm spending all this money on this help. And I'm like, yeah, but I have a better quality of life. And then what I realized is that I could actually focus on bringing in more owners and growing more. So it really is a mindset shift when you think about it from an executive or from leveraging your time. I mean, it's key, because I almost have to stop myself sometimes, because I live nearby a few of the properties, and there'll be something going on. And I'm like, oh, I'll just drop it off. I'll go do it myself. And I'm like, Shannon, no, that's still 20 minutes for me to go do that. And that 20 minutes could be used on working on the investment presentation, working on talking to owners, instead of having my staff do it. And it's still, I'm going to tell you, I still struggle with it, because I'm like, oh, I'm right here. Let me save the money. But you really need to think about leveraging your time better, and how much is your time worth versus how much your team's time is worth.
I've realized that also in bringing in quality employees into the organization. I used to be super cheap about it and say, like,
I remember your first hire. Not to bring up your past,
no,
I saw you from the beginning, and I was like, why are you guys hiring? Because you're gonna get terrible quality people. I remember that, and I was like, just pay an extra $1 more.
Yeah, and honestly, it does make a difference. And now I see it with our clients. Like, we're probably one of the more expensive services out there. For all of you that are watching, we're expensive, okay? But we're expensive for a reason. It's quality. If you want low quality output, you can pay that low quality input. But the realization is, if you pay people well, and when I say well, like, they are going to be well off. One, they're going to stay with your organization. They're not leaving for another job that offers, an extra benefit or an extra bonus or, a 20% increase. They're not leaving. They're staying with your organization, and competency level and experience level is always going to be higher because they have that background. I see this currently. We have in our leadership structure, we have a marketing director, we have a chief operating officer, we have a sales team in place. These people are getting paid the top 1% of income overseas in the Philippines. There's a reason for that, because they're good. I give this example from my chief operating officer. If I were to hire her in New York City locally, it would cost $250,000 a year, 100%. For her competency, 100%. $250,000 a year it would cost. Why I'm such a big advocate for going global in your hiring perspective is that you can scale a company now. You don't have to have millions of dollars in funding to build a really good team. You can bootstrap your company so well if you're looking global, looking at the Philippines, looking at other countries, Colombia, now in Nigeria, Eastern Europe. You're not constrained by a border anymore. And I've seen such a huge upside to my business with that change in mindset.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is, if it can be done on a computer, if their full-time job is being done on a computer, then it should be outsourced. It should at least be considered in a different country. Yes. Or around somewhere else.
This is something to keep in mind, and I think people forget this. Outsourcing does not mean taking the projects that you have and just saying, hey, here it is. bye, I'm leaving. There's a level of accountability that you need to have in place so your goals are being met.
You're still part of your team. Yeah.
Still part of your team. They're a part of your team 100%. I talk about in sales. I made this mistake when I first started. I don't have a sales background. I have an operations background like you. I had to build a sales team from scratch. I didn't know what I was doing. I just said, here, these are like leads, and go call them. Biggest mistake I ever made. Spent a lot of time and energy and money, and it went to waste because I did not provide a level of accountability. I did not hold my team members accountable. And now it's every day we go through game tape footage, listen to recordings, go through calls, provide feedback, set expectations for the amount of or number of clients we bring in every single month. It's accountability, accountability, accountability.
I love it. You may need to share some of this gameplay, the scorecard you have, so I could learn more. That's great. I'm so proud of you, man. That sounds, you almost have to learn like the hard way a little bit. I mean, in this case, you shouldn't have to learn the hard way because you'll have a company like yours. But like you learn and you're like, okay, how do I do this better? And how do I make this better? That's great. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. I'm happy for your success. And I think for anyone watching, there's a lot of key insights they can take from how you went from the corporate space to now running a property management company. In terms of kind of just to give you a chance to plug your company, if there's any potential owners, investors out there watching, how can they get in touch with Miss Shannon St.
LinkedIn would be best, but you can also email me at Shannon, SHANNON at ep-mg.com. So that goes directly to me and I will respond. But you can also find me on LinkedIn at Shannon St.
Cool. All right. We'll be sure to tag you in there. Shannon, I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. We've been very good friends for years now. You're the one that actually introduced me to the concept of offshoring. So you hold a very special place in my heart.
Same. Cool. And so happy for all the success. And anybody, you should definitely work with Blendi and his team at Delegate. They're amazing. I've worked with them as well. I think so highly of you, and you just literally inspire me. And I'm so happy to be your friend, but then also just a colleague to kind of just bounce ideas off of. Because, I call you and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? So, I mean, you've just been all around.
Super good relationship. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in this week to the Sip and Scale podcast. We'll see you next time.